I'm going to ask some questions from here rather than crowd the stage too much.
Nice one. Same to you.
I think this has been quite an unusual session in terms of cultural identity, only because of the coincidence that all the projects relate to a kind of religion or a spiritual background, you know, rather than, for example, kind of, well, last year, for example, I chaired a lot of sessions on First Nation issues and the representation of that. So a very interesting session indeed. And I'd like to kick off by asking a question of all of you, which is to what extent the architectural pieces you have created could be regarded as secular buildings or for secular uses, or at least part secular uses, because I'm thinking that some of them are for international visitors, so that's obvious. But I think actually one could easily imagine these used for other things. So I suppose my question is, to what extent, when you were designing these facilities, were you conscious of other sorts of architecture and other sorts of uses that have informed the specific thing that you were asked to design? Oh, let's kick off with Koffi and Diabaté. Yes, sir.
Actually, what was really interesting in the design process was questioning the notion of museum and museum as an open space, but also as something that represents a very strong, specific spiritual system. And something I did not mention is the fact that the museum is right across a cathedral, which actually raised many questions in terms of the possibility of the two to cohabitate. The museum arguing that as a museum, it has no religious purpose, so which did not have to be placed on the same level as the cathedral on the other side. But what I think is interesting with the museum is the fact that it's quite open and quite, well, its function is actually to house people, not necessarily a spiritual function, and that sort of makes it easier for people to have access to it, as opposed to maybe something that has a more potent spiritual meaning. So for that, I think the museum is relatively easy in terms of connecting with the rest.
Let's move to the Holocaust Museum, because this is a path that's been trodden by many architects in different cities. And I wonder to what extent you were influenced by similar buildings in different cities, and what is sort of distinctive about this one. Obviously the concentration, that's the wrong word, the density of population of victims was one consideration, but were there other things that made this distinctive from other Holocaust museums?
I believe so, and secularity is very much part of the sort of founding principle, if you like. I think because of the amount of time that's elapsed, it's almost a new paradigm. In other words, what was first and foremost in our minds was not to do what most of the Holocaust museums have done, which is to somehow recreate the Holocaust experience, which of course is impossible, and force visitors to something that looks like Auschwitz or something like that with that materiality and so on. And also what attracted us to the competition was the mission of this institution, which does exist right now in the foot of an office building, the base of an office building, to be relevant to all communities, because genocide is not just the Holocaust. It's unfortunately affects everybody. So the fact that also it's very much embedded in the culture and morphology of Montreal, the physical structure, and the fact that the whole ground floor connects to the city. It's open to everybody. We have a cafe, bookstore, which is kind of very much the life of it engages in the life of the city. And we hope, and the belief is that it would be used for many different kinds of events as well. And it's, in fact, the visitation at the current museum is very much predominantly non-Jewish. So it hopes to reach out to all communities.
I was going to ask, and this is very, of all the projects, this is the most sort of site and city specific, isn't it, as it relates to where it is?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we were a bit surprised with the selection of the site because in Montreal, you know, lots of museums are implemented in other areas of the city. They're more like pavilions set within, you know, the urban fabric. But this one is really intricately set on the main, which is a totally urban, you know, kind of location. So as Shirley was saying, they really wanted to reconnect with the vibrancy of the city. That was so, just to make sure that the museum would be visited, of course, for the exhibitions, but also for all of the animation and, you know, lectures that they could have on the ground floor because we have the auditorium and so on. So it's really, really rooted in Montreal and the reality of the city.
Now, turning to the Jain Centre, which is a fascinating story because it's far more internalized. I mean, it's for a community which I suppose feels that, you know, the world is going on around it, and it is sticking to a philosophy which has been around longer than, you know, most religions. And I wonder to what extent, when you were designing the building, you had the feeling that it was for a closed community? Or is there an element about this that would encourage other people to come in and learn about Jain philosophy and beliefs?
So, for sure, it is open to outside people also. So the thing is, the reason why they want to also reimagine this whole community center. If you traditionally see the community centers in India, they have done in a style of architecture which is very traditional to the, with the arches and the, you know, kind of very, very this. And that kind of, does not open up to every community or does not open up very easily to people. But here they wanted to come up with something which was more futuristic, which was more kind of acceptable to everyone which is there. So that's why it is taken up in a, they asked us to do something which was very different. The prayer hall is open to everyone. You can go and sit, there is no restriction. So you can be a part of the same prayer, and you can, if you feel like, you can go and sit in the prayer hall. You can become the part of the prayer. You have to follow their rules, but that is what it is. You know, they, as I said, that they have their ways of doing it. So that is what it is, but it is open to all the people. The community hall is given for their community, but when they have their celebrations, people from all different communities from outside are all invited, and everyone comes into the space. Everyone walks into the courtyard. Everyone enjoys the space which is there. So the project is open to communities which are from all different communities. There is no restriction as far as that is concerned. And that is why the identity of the project is created as a futuristic identity to open up the minds, to open up this, and to make it more interactive at all levels.
Thank you very much. Which leads neatly onto the Dubai Mosque, because the line of investigation which your practice has undertaken in relation to religious buildings is extremely interesting, because it's based on the religion itself rather than actually proposing something which is in either complementary or even in opposition to received ideas. So in the same way that you've abandoned arch forms which might, say, keep out to other people, what you've done with the built project and now the new one is to say, well, this is a profoundly religious building because it's completely based on on religious principles, but those principles are not commonly understood by quite a large proportion, I would have thought, of the Islamic world, because they continue to build mosques and minarets on the very, very traditional model. Whereas what you've done is doing something which is completely rooted in history, and yet, on the other hand, especially with that lovely photography, kind of looks like a tourist destination.
Yeah, actually our aim was to go back to the essence, because in a mosque or any other religious building, there is not a defined form anywhere you can pray, and it's only something between you and your God, whoever, whatever it is. So all the other additions, the ornaments, the minarets, the domes, everything are the additions of traditions and different cultures. So when we are faced with a mosque design in Sancaklar in Istanbul, the first thing in Turkey while doing a mosque is putting those one of the Sinan mosques with the minarets and the dome. But this is a search going to the roots. Actually, the main roots of all religions are similar. So it's even going back to the roots of every religion. Again, I would say whoever you believe in. But it's a place to be alone with your spirituality, and to be alone with your God. In that sense, these locations that we have suggested are like universal locations for whoever wants to pray there. We have received many emails from different religions about this Sancaklar Mosque, which they say that all of them would like to pray there. As a touristic destination, that was also ironic for the Sancaklar Mosque. When we designed it, we weren't sure if it was going to be built, but surprisingly, they embraced the building and it was built. Then the community embraced the building. Again, we were a bit curious about that, because it's not easy in Turkey or in any Islamic country to clean away all these religious habits and figures. And lately now it's in the route of cultural tours in Istanbul.
Well, I'm going to ask one other question which relates to this business about when you're designing these sorts of buildings, how do you simultaneously design for the individual desire and experience, and perhaps the desire for privacy and for thoughtfulness, with the fact that they're also designed for collective use, either just in terms of visitation or in terms of worship? Let's run along the line from the left.
Thank you. I think that's very much the genesis of our design concept, which is that there are moments, like in the commemoration room or in the permanent exhibitions, where really you're very much on your own confronting history or remembering someone. So probably the most profound moments that one would experience. And that is very much sort of contrasted by the engagement at the ground floor in the life of the city, opening it up to everybody for various uses, as Renee has mentioned. And also, we very deliberately wanted this relief of connecting with nature, because that's what everybody is deprived of in the camps. So I think it is foundational to our the visitor experience that you would go through the entire gamut of emotions, and in the end, this building really is about hope, because people survived.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would add that, I think that the program was interesting in terms of allocating spaces, as Shiri was saying, on one-to-one basis or for groups. Let's say within the auditorium, there are groups that will be coming to tour the museum. There are children, there's a youth exhibition and so on. But I do think that, so we offer these different type of spaces, but what was really important in the museum was to reconnect it with the notion of the city, the Montréalité, and the landscape also, just to offer different type of experiences for, you know, when you're within a group or as individuals when visiting the project, and you know, be it on the ground floor, on the second floor, and then on the terrace, always kind of referring to the notion of the heart of the museum, which is identified by the landscape that we have there.
Thank you.
Well, in the case of museums, usually you have the function is actually to open it to the public. And in this case, very specifically, because we're talking about voodoo, which actually has a very strong negative image in the people's imagination. And the point here is actually to take people through a journey, a process in which they sort of have no choice but reconnect to the sort of sacred condition of what voodoo is in the spiritual system. So it's almost the opposite, you know, as what you have in the mosque project, where it actually functions as a mosque first and then maybe as something else. Here is quite the opposite. It's actually how do you take the people through the journey and actually make them conscious of the fact that voodoo is a full-fledged spiritual system engaging in even more than religion, but it touches aspects of self-definition. You know, for instance, in voodoo, it's very important, you know, name and the word are very important, which are notions that we find in other religions as well. So in this case, it's pretty much the opposite, discovery.
Thank you.
Actually, religion is a very personal thing. So the building, the mosque buildings are designed for the personal spirituality. I agree with that. Mosque is the main space in that complex, but later comes the other spaces. But in a way, it's also a community space where people gather several times a day. While being so individual and alone in the space, you are also together with many people. So in this project, starting with the idea of mosque, but going to the community center was something like this. When people go there, and it's also a way to integrate the building with the public, to add some public amenities like art rooms, community centers, and etc. I would say that it's something that goes together, while the mosque building is a very personal building of an identity. The buildings themselves are like public spaces. So it's like a gathering of the both different worlds.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. While the design has been done where, you know, you have community gatherings, but there are times when the monk is not there. These monks travel from one place to the other. So the prayer hall, which is designed with that way the light is coming in, becomes like a meditation place where individuals can walk in, they can sit inside there, they can sit in their own and they can do their own meditation. Connected to that is the landscape. So you have the step wells where if you feel like you can just sit in front of the water with the sound of water and you can meditate and you can go inward towards yourself. Also, the rooms have been designed in such a way that every room has started to be given a terrace or a balcony which is stepping behind. So we have created these different level of spaces which are available, that you can sit at any place and you can be at your individual self, to be there, to go inside yourself and start seeing what you are looking at. So when there are prayers and when there are meetings, there can be a gathering in the community hall or in the prayer hall. But when it's a multi-purpose space which can be used for individual people coming in and sitting and meditating, concentrating, and doing their own prayers or self.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I think that what we've seen this afternoon is the way in which similar architectural challenges have been addressed in different continents, with different religions and different people. And yet I think there's an identifiable line of thinking about how you deal with the individual and the collective, how you deal with the man-made and nature, and how you deal with the personal experience of what I think the audience will agree were 4 lovely pieces of architecture. So thank you very much for that. And we're going to present you with your WAFX awards now and have the traditional wedding photograph.